Hi friends, we are here in Acts chapter 27. This is a chapter where Paul is shipwrecked. And he set out to go to be tried in Rome, to be tried before Caesar. And so there's a centurion, his name's Julius. And I want to point out here that Julius seems like a really great guy. I feel like once again, these centurions that are supposed to be these bad guys, every centurion that I've seen in the book of Acts so far has been pretty great. So he goes, and on their way, they stop in the city, and Julius basically lets Paul go see his friends so they can take care of him. And he must have trusted Paul quite a bit, to just leave. Paul, for all he knows, he's a prisoner. He could have escaped. But he must have known that Paul doesn't want to escape. He wants to go to Rome. He wants to preach to, Caesar's family. He wants to preach to Caesar himself. And God's telling him, you're going to go to Rome. I want you to go to Rome. So there's no issue with Paul. He's not going to leave. Everybody trusts him, and that even is true later on in this chapter. So they get going on this boat, and it says it in this chapter that this boat is way bigger than I originally thought. I've heard and read this story quite a bit, and I always pictured it being like, a small boat with maybe like 6 people in it. But it said that there were like over 270 people. It was a huge ship, especially for back then. I don't know how they would control a boat that big, in that time with such a primitive culture. Their ability to make ships must have been much better than I realized. Anyways, they start going, and they're taking it easy because it is the fall. And in the fall, the waters start getting really bad on the Mediterranean. There's really nothing you can do about it. You just don't sail in the winter, because in the winter the waters are just horrible. So it said they were sailing by the lee of Crete, which means that it's kind of like by the shelter of Crete, they're keeping away from heavy winds because they're keeping close to Crete. That's keeping that, on their side. So they stop in Crete for a bit, and it doesn't say it here, but later on you find out that Paul doesn't really get along with the Cretans. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's why we called them Cretans. Like if someone, I don't know if you've ever heard that term. If you're watching this and you're from Crete, I apologize. But there's a part, I think it's in the book of Titus, where Paul is like, the Cretans they're a really difficult people. So as they're getting in the boat, Paul's saying, I don't think we should be going on this journey. We're going to lose the boat, and we're going to lose our lives. And, these guys don't realize that Paul is a prophet. There's no way around it. Paul is a prophet. He's a major prophet. And it said the captain of the ship was like, I don't know. Should I listen to this old man, or should I listen to, the pilot or the centurion? So he decides to ignore Paul, and then a nor'easter comes. Now they say that in this time they would get very strong winds from the north and the east, and this doesn't sound like a horrible thing because they're heading west, and so a nice east wind sounds like a good thing. But it's the north it's the north part, it's coming from the north, so it's actually pushing them south. And if you see on a map how the journey went and where they were trying to go, like Rome is like way up north. And it's hard to miss it's hard to miss Italy, but if you do, at least you'll hit Sicily. But this wind, it missed Italy and Sicily. And if you look at it, it is truly a miracle that they hit Malta. Because Malta is a tiny little island. And they couldn't see the stars. They had no way of knowing where they were going. And so it said that they were on the ship for a very long time. And Paul says, you guys should have listened to me, but a messenger from God came to me today and said, everybody's going to survive and that I'm going to go to Rome. So some of the guys were thinking that they were close to shore, and they were pretty close to shore. And so they were just about to jump off the boat and escape. And Paul says, wait, if you guys go, we're going to die. It's kind of like a conditional prophecy that he's having here. We'll make it, but everybody has to go together. And so, sure enough, after 14 days of them not eating any food, and this is after they threw away all of their, most of their extra weight. I guess they just had some bread with them, and so Paul's like, look, I know we've been rationing our foods, but it's over. You guys can all eat. And it's funny, he just kind of breaks into the bread and he just starts eating it, and that encouraged everybody, and so they started eating too. But it's funny because before there it says that the people had completely given up hope. They were like, we are dead. We're going to be lost at sea. There's no way out of this. We've got no way to get where we want to go, and we have no idea where we are. We're going to be at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. But Paul, he says, we're running aground. We're all going to make it, and you guys can eat bread right now because we're going to need the energy to get there. And sure enough, they get there. Now, I want to point out something else about the centurion. They were going to take all the prisoners and they were going to kill them all so that they wouldn't swim away. But the centurion kept them all alive because he wanted to keep Paul alive. So I don't know if this is the same centurion. I think it may be, the one Julius that was in the beginning. But what a great what a great guy. So everybody made it to shore. I think what this shows here, this chapter, is, first of all, I guess I'll make 2 points. I wasn't planning on making 2 points, but I will. And the first one is that when these difficult things happen, when you're on a tempestuous sea, as it said, a lot of times it's for God's good. We're going to go to Romans here pretty soon, and in Romans chapter 8 it says, all things work for the good for those that love God and who are called according to his purpose. And I think this is an example of that. It's a hard thing, but the gospel came to Malta, and Paul was able to spend the rest of the winter there. So this all works out. This is God's provision for the people of Malta. And so I guess that was thing 1 and 2. The first thing was that if God's carrying you through these things, it's probably for the good of the gospel, and by extension that's the good for you. you know, in the end, God's going to look at us and say, what have you done? And if you can point to this trial and say, this worked out and I handled this well, that's the best thing that can happen for you. But the other point was that God really just loved the people of Malta like he loves all people, and he really cared about spreading his gospel there. And even now, if you go to Malta, there's a bay there called St. John's. Is it St. John's Bay? St. John's Bay is a store. St. Paul's Bay. And so yeah, the gospel went there right away, and the people, they keep that history in very high esteem. So anyways, it's a wonderful chapter, Acts 27. Have a great day. Bye.